Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
Today we're reviewing Season 1, Episode 3 of Saturday Night Live. This episode originally aired on October 25th, 1975, with host Rob Reiner and no musical guest. Brad, this was getting to what would become a normal show for Saturday Night Live, with a host, a bunch of sketches, some other performances, but all in all, like, you can see it's starting to gel into something.
Well, I'd argue with you right there.
Oh, good.
Because, well, no.
No.
No, because I was thinking about this. Are there really that many sketches? I think there's one sketch in the show.
No, there's more than that. I mean, if you even just going away from the cold open, I'm not going to count the cold open,
right,
but you still have the Pancreas Association.
I'm taking away any kind of PSA type weird thing.
Why?
Okay.
How is that not a sketch?
I guess I'm referring to what we talked about in episode 1 as like the home security's real sketch.
Yeah. I didn't listen to episode 1, so fill me in.
Oh, you and no one else. So I mean, we'll get through it. We'll probably edit all of this out, but like, I wouldn't count Pancreas thing. I wouldn't count the Chevy Chase Droolers thing. I wouldn't count the 4 pre-tapes. I wouldn't count the cold open. I wouldn't count the bees because it's a setup for a sketch. I think the only quote unquote sketch in this episode is the fashion do's and don'ts.
The square dance?
Fuck. Okay, there's 2.
All right, good. I knew there was more than one. I mean, I disagree with you. I think some of these, there's a talk show, there's the squeaky.
Okay, you're right. You're right. All right, I'm completely wrong.
All right. Well, do you want to go back and rewatch the episode while I talk about this?
I should. But I can now just agree with you instead.
No, I mean, look, I think this show was interesting because Rob Reiner was clearly the host, and he clearly hosted this show, and it was still in that time period where it's a variety show that they're putting on.
Right.
And so there are the sketches, to your point, the sketches aren't what they would become, but there was a lot there that they went to for this one.
Yeah, it's definitely the first showing of what this show would become format wise. I think, the history of the show, episode 4 is kind of heralded as the first time people think of what the show would be. But in watching episode 3 here, no, a lot of it is here. There's a lot here, surprisingly.
There is. And I think it was interesting coming from last week's show where Paul Simon, that was just a unique show in and of itself. Rob Reiner hosted this show as a true host better than George Carlin or Paul Simon to this point. This was like hosting a variety show.
Which is funny because he almost didn't host the show. Like, do you know the story how he tried to walk off after dress?
No.
So the big story behind the scenes of this episode is after the dress rehearsal, Rob Reiner was so unhappy. He basically, I don't know if the right word is threw a fit, but basically he wanted to quit. He complained to Lauren about the writing and that it wasn't good and that he was getting sold out and the show was going to be awful. And I guess with his reputation at that point, like, it was just going to be horrible. And like, he legitimately tried to walk off the show before it went on live.
Interesting. That gives a whole new meaning to the bees sketch at the end as well.
Totally. And apparently this went on all week, like throughout the entire week, like him and Lauren were fighting over what would go on, what wouldn't go on. Possibly not that surprising. The idea for the monologue is a Rob Reiner idea, not an SNL thought up idea. So like that was a battle. Rob Reiner fought and insisted that this 13-minute epic Albert Brooks film gets shown. So like the whole week, there's all this clashing between Lauren and the show versus Rob Reiner, leading up to post-dress. He wants to walk off, and then Lauren basically convincing him to stay on the show. So like to your point of like him actually being an actual host, when you learn the backstory of it all, it's funny to hear, because you're right.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you say. And it's just interesting learning that backstory, which also knowing that going in, I had an already kind of predisposition in my mind to not like this show, which in watching it was unfair.
No, I could see that. But it also kind of, if you watch this show knowing that, if you were to remove Rob Reiner, you could still go on with this show. Like if he had left after Dress and all of a sudden they have to go live, they probably would have thrown Chevy into that host role and he could have filled it.
Yeah. Well, and that is what I think is one of the great things about this episode, and watching it in the course of where it falls in the history of the show here, is that as its own, this episode, it's like black and white to me. Part of it I hate. I think there are horrendous things in this episode, and it is just not a good episode. On the other hand, there are some amazing things in this episode that happen. And I would argue this is one of the most important shows in the history of the show.
That's interesting. I really want to hear about these parts of the show that you think are so integral. So should we just...
Well, the main thing I would say, and we'll get into it, is we see the cast. Like bottom line, as you were saying, if he left, you could still go on. Yes, because unlike the first two episodes, we actually see the cast as a whole.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot to unpack with this episode. Should we just get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. We start with the cold open. The cold open's another... It's kind of awkward to me, starting in the slice of life sketch. They did this in the first episode. You do this here, as opposed to starting with a TV show or what we've become accustomed to with like a shot of the White House.
Well, to me, this was obviously... like, we have to write a pratfall skit. What do we do? Because that's all this is. This was blatantly written for Chevy to somehow fall and give the line. So it's pretty weak in that aspect. Not only is it weak, the fall is weak.
It's funny because I think my initial reaction watching the fall was, oh, you're committed to make that type of fall on that stage. But the sketch itself, I thought, was very weak. It was also very short, like most sketches at this time, but
which I'd say is a plus for, it's short, it's quick and to the point. Like, this is what it is. We wrote a sketch for Chevy to fall and say the name of the show, and let's do it. So it does what it has to do and gets us in and out quick enough.
It does. And it's fine. I'm not a huge fan of the pratfalls, and I know it's a staple. This one I thought it was just that part where I was like, oh, he committed to falling face first on the ground. Nothing spectacular in my view. The opening credits, then one thing that stuck out to me was introducing Rob's guests, Penny Marshall and the Lockers. They weren't special guests. They weren't appearances. They were Rob's guests.
Well, Lorne tried to get Penny to co-host originally.
Oh, yeah.
When he went to talk to Rob Reiner to host, he talked to him and Penny together, and he actually wanted them to host as a couple. And Penny, who hadn't yet been on Laverne and Shirley, I think it came out a couple months later, but that show hadn't even aired yet. He wanted her, and she was like, no, I don't want to do it. I think she even comments on how, like, even then she knew, like, they can't write for the girls who are on the show. What am I going to do? So she said no, but she was coming out anyway. So then they added her as a guest, whether it's Rob's guest or whoever, but that's how they added her as a guest. But originally the idea was, I think Lorne did try to get her as a co-host.
Interesting.
She has a story about John and Dan having a sketch with her, wanting to do some kind of a Russian shoe store, but she couldn't pull off the accent, so they bailed on that. So she basically just kind of comes as Rob Reiner's sidekick a couple times.
Yeah, no, it's good to see her. And the Lockers. I'm excited to talk about that.
It's good to see Michael O'Donoghue back in the credits.
Michael O'Donoghue's back with the cast, getting the cast up to 8. And then special appearances by Andy Kaufman and Denny Dillon and Mark Hampton.
Yes.
As I said, no musical guest for this show, and we'll get into that at the moment. But then we roll into the monologue, which is different.
Different in many ways. It's the first time we see the host actually come from behind the stage.
and give, kind of, it is a true monologue.
Oh, it's a monologue. It's something.
So Rob Reiner comes out in, first of all, the stage is totally different too. They have lights, like runway lights.
Well, they really play up
sketch.
that whole little mini stage thing. So, because those lights stay on the whole episode, but they really play up that little mini platform. Yeah.
Yeah. Rob Reiner comes out from behind the curtain wearing a wig and a big tuxedo with I don't know what you call those ruffles. I guess they're ruffles, right? I was going to say.
I would call the ruffles.
Yeah. And he comes out in character just as like an over the top entertainment guy. Like, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Oh, great. Hey, whoa.
Yeah, like a Vegas lounge singer.
Yeah. My favorite bit from this, though, was when he's like, oh, I just want to thank him for coming out. We have a star in the audience now. He's a good friend. He's done so much. You make us think of Christmas. He gives this like big long introduction to Irving Berlin. And then the camera goes to this random guy in the audience. And the chyron just says, not Irving Berlin. But Rob doesn't know that.
I didn't like any of this. I didn't get, it was not funny. It was so slow. He does the dead Dillon bit. Like, I don't understand if that shtick actually worked. The only good thing I got out of any of this was like we actually acknowledge Howard Shore in the band. That was the only thing. That was the only thing I liked. It was great.
I knew. I wrote that down and I was like, I'm not going to get to say this because I know Brad's going to beat me to it. But yeah, he introduces Howard Shore and his orchestra.
And then, like, why doesn't it just end? Like, end the monologue after that song. He does a song and then keeps on going. Does a callback to Dillon, and I'm like, great, now end. Right. And then he leaves, and then I guess he comes back out and finally, pulls the wig off and reveals that it's him. But it's, very long, very unfunny. Like we referenced in the beginning, Lorne did not like this. He wanted to nix it. It was still so early in the show that, he did not feel they were in a position to argue, with a celebrity about stuff. Right. They were going to bow to because it obviously was a big getting Rob Reiner. Like, what was All in Family at this time? Like, what was its deal? It
was still number one. It had been the number one show on TV for 4 years at this point, and this was the 5th year in a row it would be the number one show on television.
Okay, so it's a huge getting Rob Reiner for your show. So he's like, I'm not going to argue with him. Also, didn't think it was worth the fight, but you see it up there and it's like, yeah, it's fucking dead weight.
Yeah. And it does go on forever, but then he comes back out, takes the wig off and introduces the show, which I thought was like, okay, we could have gotten here 4 minutes ago, but all right.
So much earlier, but anyway.
So our first bit of the night after this monologue bit is the bit for the National Pancreas Association. It's a sketch with John and Gilda playing husband and wife again.
Are they playing the same husband and wife?
They're wearing the same clothes.
Are they really? That's why I think it then. It is the same outfit? Okay.
Yes. And John's wearing the same glasses.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Same glasses and same outfits as in episode 1. Just for reference for anyone wondering. Gilda asks him about his pancreas.
The setup is funny. Yeah. Did you ever think it might be your pancreas? Like, it's a funny line, but it's another one continuing in the theme from episode 1. It's just so short.
It's very short.
Sketch itself. It's just so short.
It is. And I enjoy how silly it is. Like, it's just kind of, did you ever think it's your pancreas? No. Go to the doctor, talk to the doctor. And the next day he's like, I'm taking care of my pancreas.
Yeah, this missed for me as well. Like, I agree with you. The setup's funny and I was excited to watch it be silly. And I feel like it never delivered off of the silliness of that line. It never got back to that point. So I don't know. I was excited to see a sketch again after, the last episode of seeing nothing, see Belushi, see Aykroyd, see Gilda. But
this is a Rosie Apple sketch. Rosie Schuster. On the credits, she's credited as Rosie Apple.
Is she? In this episode? I don't know. They change the credits every day.
No, I know. Minus
the Muppets. Is this the first sketch they've done that takes place on 2 different sets?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Maybe.
Because you have the living room and the doctor's office.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything in the first episode was long enough to be in 2 sets, and there were no sketches in the second episode. So sure, yeah.
And did you notice when they cut back to the living room and they see Gilda,
Yes.
you could kind of catch John like falling into the couch at the last second.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, it was good.
Then they do another Chiron bit with an audience member.
Yeah, I mean, we see them throughout the season. I think sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're not. But I like as it's something unique to the show. But
Oh yeah.
I think more often than not they miss. But it's something fun to see.
Do you think they miss, or do you think they are so of the time? Like the references are so specific to current events and current people. Do you know who Lee Radziwill is? Radziwill?
Oh, no, but I don't know if that would have done it, changed my opinion or not.
She's Jackie Kennedy's sister, turns out. Our next sketch features everyone in the cast.
Not everyone.
Oh, not Chevy.
I noted that. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is called Fashion Don'ts with Rob Reiner, and Penny Marshall comes on for this.
And he's still wearing that stupid tuxedo.
Well, it fits for this
I guess
sketch,
so.
right? I mean, Penny's in a nice dress too, as they're like host and hostess of a fashion show is
Right.
what this is.
I didn't like the beginning of this whole like breaking of the fourth wall of like him kind of like talking to us as Rob into the sketch. Did you like that?
No, I wish it was different, but it was the way that they introduced Penny, right?
Right, which took a minute. Like once I saw that, I kind of understood why they did it, but maybe it was just his delivery of it, but I didn't like the whole idea of it. Didn't work. I don't know.
I don't disagree with you. The whole thing was awkward with, like, I don't know why he had to pretend that he didn't know Penny Marshall was there.
I mean, this whole thing this is a bad sketch. This is a very bad sketch. All it is like absurd jokes, which I don't think any of them work. There's 2 funny bits. One was the Dan Aykroyd leisure suit.
Yes.
And the second was,
one.
I like the Michael O'Donoghue toilet paper trail. I mean, those 2, they were the only 2 funny things in this whole bit, but like for your whole sketch, not good.
No, I agree. The Dan Aykroyd one was the funniest. Also, what was funny was Rob Reiner didn't think his mic was working. His mic was working perfectly
I couldn't
fine.
tell if he thought that or he was just trying to be fun. I mean, I noticed what you were talking about when he went to use Penny's mic.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what the point was, unless this is him still being upset that like stuff's not working and he's trying to like be funny about it. Maybe.
I don't know. I just like, you could tell at one point he looks off stage and like he's looking for something. And it's just, I think he's not hearing it in the studio, and that's all.
I think he's
But it
just
was
unhappy
working.
with everything and looking to be, I don't know. Never mind.
No. I like these all of the drama that you set up.
It's all in my own head.
Well, not all
But
of it.
but yes, you do notice him like using Penny's mic and you're like, what's the point? There's no need.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah, the only thing that here was Dan's. And I think the way Dan delivered it and walked the catwalk, and he had this look of the type of person that would wear this leisure suit. I thought he pulled it off.
I mean, the only good thing about this sketch is that you, minus Chevy, get the whole cast, which was nice because you had almost 2 episodes of not really seeing the whole cast. So it was nice to see the whole cast again, especially so early.
Well, I think it was a miss. I agree with you. Not great. At the end of this, Rob throws to a filmed message.
Another miss. Yes.
Yes, it was definitely a miss, but it's to the point where they weren't pretending that this was a commercial, or maybe they were. And Rob, I don't know. Now you got it in my head.
Yeah. See,
that
now
there's
you
all
don't
this
know.
drama.
Mhm.
No, I don't know. Great.
No, I think this is it's another pre-tape commercial parody kind of thing with George Coe and Jacqueline Carlin.
Yeah. And it's a pre-tape for, what is it? Voodoo acupuncture. The people are all, I'm having brain surgery right now. Chevy says, I'm having a vasectomy. All because it's being done through voodoo dolls. It's a weird concept, and I didn't think it was that funny.
No, I mean, listen, yeah. They went out west in the summer. They shot a lot of these pre-tapes, which is why so many of them have people who aren't on the show because they were in LA shooting a lot of these. So they just had a stockpile of stuff, which again makes sense if you're going to go back and do your live show, have stuff in your back pocket. It's just, I don't know why they think that I don't know even where I'm going with this. Can we just move on?
Yeah.
I don't need to talk about cold needles.
No one does.
The only thing, the very end was funny. Priority given to like earliest postage. Like they had one funny line. I'll give them credit, but like, Christ.
I'm laughing more at you thinking that was the only funny line, because I was like, all right, that one's mildly funny, but I guess next to everything else, it was the funniest line.
I've hated on this episode for however many sketches it's been already. Let's just move on to something positive.
All right. So Rob takes his hosting duties very seriously and comes back on to introduce Andy Kaufman.
Thank God.
Andy comes back with the record player, same as he did with Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, revisit to his bit from episode 1. Yep.
Yeah, and he lip syncs Pop Goes the Weasel. And he does this little arm thing the entire time. He's kind of keeping time with it. And he even lip syncs the father parts when there's a talking bit in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think this is another great bit. I think Andy Kaufman is 2 for 2 on the show so far this season. Not only, like you said, does he sing, he does the dad's dialogue. He has amazing reactions when the girl starts having dialogue conversations. And then and then he like starts singing in tandem. Like the whole thing's hilarious to me.
No, I agree. But let's take a step back with Andy Kaufman and just imagine how much time he spent alone doing these things. And he was like, I can make this funny.
But that's why he's so good.
No, I know. He's a mad genius.
Like I spent the first however minute watching it with a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And at the same time wondering, what in the hell am I watching? Like and part of me is like, is he just going to sing this whole song?
Yes.
But that's what he does. I mean, that's his brilliance when it works. That's what he does. And then when he finally does the dialogue and stops and look like, it's just great. But it took me a while. I was like, what is going to happen? And again, yeah, I thought he was great.
He was fabulous. The next bit is another talk show hosted by Jane.
As Jane, she plays herself in this one. Jane Curtin is the host.
Yes, of the talk show Dangerous But Inept. And she interviews Squeaky, played by Lorraine. Is this Lorraine's first sketch that we've seen her not playing herself?
Well, no, she's in the Bees episode 1. She plays a nurse.
Okay. I forgot we were counting that.
But you want to get technical.
Yeah. Lorraine plays a member of the Manson family who tried to kill the president and is trying to kill Jane throughout the interview.
Yeah, you summed it up. That was it.
Yep. That was it. Then,
I mean, my note on this is, holy shit, that was short. But at the same time, how long can you milk this gag for? It's good. I mean, it's funny. Lorraine's good. Jane, not surprisingly, is hilarious. But like her non-reaction to Lorraine trying to shoot her repeatedly is great. And I actually applaud the fact that they don't try to milk this for 5 minutes and they just do it, 2-3 times. Like, okay, we're out. Goodbye. Like this is an example to me of a short sketch that works. You know your time limit. You hit all the beats and then you get out. And it's great. And you get to see, it's the first time we see an all-woman sketch, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the 2 of them are great. But it's another, to your point, it's another Jane Curtin talk show host. And it's great.
Yeah. But it is only 1 minute and 5 seconds. Just very, very short.
But that didn't bother me. Like,
no, because it was
I
good.
think because there's so much different stuff in this episode. You know what I mean? Like episode 1, I feel like we were complaining because everything was so short and you were so upset. But like in this episode, this felt fine. Like I didn't mind this being short. It felt good. The timing of it all worked. And I think if it went longer, we'd be complaining that they just stayed on it too long.
Yeah.
Like the monologue.
It was a tight 1 minute sketch. It was good. From there, we moved into another pre-tape commercial that I did not think was very good.
I didn't like this one either.
Felina Cat Food is a blind taste test in a supermarket where they have a woman tasting 2 different tuna casseroles.
Yeah. I mean, this is a Franken and Davis bit that they wrote over the summer. Again, they're doing all these pre-tapes in advance. The inspiration for this was apparently a news report that Tom Davis had seen where elderly people on a budget were actually eating cat food instead of real food. And that led to this. But like, so it's completely ridiculous. It's a very Franken and Davis piece. But I don't think the payoff really is there. Like the ending wasn't what I expected. And I was kind of like, and it
totally, there was no ending. Yeah,
No.
like there was no reaction from the woman. She just had this look of mild disgust, and then it went on. It moved on. It reminded me of it's the exact opposite of the Chris Farley sketch where he's drinking the dehydrated coffee. You remember this sketch?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And his reaction is it's Chris Farley, so it's totally over the top. But this one, there was no reaction. And it just, that I was waiting for.
No, there's a reaction.
Oh.
No, she has a reaction. It's just kind of, it's like bordering on disgust, but it's so small. She reacts.
She does. No,
it just wasn't the reaction
just...
I was expecting for like the piece. I don't know. It ends very weird. It's another miss. This is why this episode to me is very two ends of the spectrum, because there's parts of me that just hate this episode. And there's just so many bad sketches and bits in it. But we're going to find out there are so much great things in it as well. Like it's just very polarizing, this episode to me. And we haven't gotten enough of the good stuff yet.
The next thing I thought was amazing. It's the lockers. And it was just, I know it's not a comedy bit. I know it's not a sketch, but it's this dance troupe that they bring energy to the show, which is...
Well, this is a great example of something you wouldn't see on television at this time in 1975, which is really cool that SNL would put this on. So that's a great example of like how SNL was showcasing new, diverse, exciting talent.
Yeah, this troupe was great. It was founded by Tony Basil, or is it Basil? I don't know how you pronounce her last name.
I think it's Basil.
I think it's Basil too.
Someone should tell us.
Yeah. But Tony Basil of Mickey fame. Hey, Mickey, you're so fine. That was her big hit. I didn't realize she's been a huge choreographer in Hollywood on all different films and television shows for the last 45, 50 years.
Well, she was kind of a big deal even before this. Like before she founded Lockers, she was known as a choreographer and dancer. Yeah, totally.
Tony Basil is actually the first person to have a second appearance on this show.
No.
Yeah. Because we see Tony Basil tonight.
Yes.
And then Tony Basil is the musical guest of episode 10.
Wow. Nice catch.
She sings with Bill Withers. She actually sings solo. He's also a musical guest. I don't know. I haven't watched that episode yet, but.
Oh, nice. Interesting. I have to ask. Yeah. In the beginning, they're dancing, right?
Yeah.
Did one of the dancers pull a Carlin? Do we count that as pulling a Carlin?
I thought he came from the side stage. Did he come from the audience?
He was there. No, one comes from the audience. It might not have been like upper deck.
Yeah.
But I'm giving him credit.
Right. Yes.
As pulling a Carlin. So we're 3 for 3 on people pulling Carlin so far this season.
So far. I just thought these guys were great.
They're amazing. It was actually kind of cool to see them too, like go through all the empty sets and stuff. Like you saw them dance through the pancreatic set, the doctor next to the living room. Like it was cool to see him do all that stuff. It was fun.
This was great. Reruns in it.
I was going to say, you mentioned Tony Basil. Did you know who else was in there?
Yeah, rerun.
Fred Barry.
Fred Barry. Rest in peace. Fred Barry from What's Happening?
Yes. And what was really bad is when I realized it was him and I'm watching him dance, all I could think of was the What's Happening episode when the Doobie Brothers are on and they go to the concert and Rerun sneaks in the tape recorder and is like making his own bootleg and gets caught because he's dancing and the tape recorder falls.
That was an instrumental episode in your life, right? That's where you found out about bootlegging, and the rest is history.
That is the one What's Happened episode I can go to right away. Other than that, I have to stop and think. But these guys are amazing. You can also tell my age. I'm watching them do stuff where they like jump. Like Fred Barry jumps and lands on his ass. And another guy like jumps and like falls on his knees. And I'm just watching this looking like, how the hell do you do that?
When he jumps and lands flat on his ass, you can see the crowd and there's a woman there and she makes a face like, oh Lord. That, because he stops and these guys are amazing.
No, they're great. One guy's like has the fireball that goes up. It's such a great show. It's a great number.
It really is. It was awesome. This leads into then Weekend Update, back to Chevy being introduced by Don Pardo and he's on the phone talking dirty with someone and then realizes he's on camera. That seems to be his intro for the last couple weekend updates, right?
Yeah. I mean, it works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's short. It's another short one.
It is. I mean, they have it is short. He does mostly political jokes again.
Fred McMurray joke's funny.
Fred McMurray joke. The Ronald Reagan joke was interesting.
And they basically just repurpose the Muhammad Ali joke from the week before with Saran changing their name.
Yes, he does. And another Blaine Hotel bit.
It was Lorraine. Yeah, it was fun to see that back again. I like how they leaned into Don Pardo. Yeah, it's pretty funny. And they do it again later on, but it's like very self-aware, and like they bring Don Pardo into the mix, and I thought it was really good. Yeah,
Don Pardo reads the list of demands from the hostage takers at the Blaine Hotel, and it's just like it's all game show prizes. This is what he's essentially reading out. It's funny. It works.
What doesn't work is the commercial that they cut to. Fake commercial.
Yeah, people movers.
This whole bit, I mean, I don't even want to talk about this. I don't get it. I don't think it's funny.
I don't think it's worth talking about. I think we can.
The only thing actually I'd say we're talking about is the only thing I'd say we're talking about is in the original airing, there was a different commercial in here. There was a Wrigley's commercial at a funeral, and I don't know the reason why, but when the DVDs got put together, they took Wrigley's out entirely and then moved this commercial up. I don't know why, but if you go now and you go to watch on the DVDs or on Peacock, you're going to see this horrendous people mover sketch that's just not worth talking about.
I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to go back to the last minute of Weekend Update, which is just rattling off some jokes. And then
after a Blaine Hotel callback, which still works, still funny.
It still works. 2 out of 3.
Yeah. And at least they came back to Weekend Update this time. Like I was worried based on what happened in episode 2, the last episode, that they were going to cut away to the commercial and then not come back. So at least they came back.
And they came back with Garrett Morris from the School of Hard of Hearing reading the news for the first time.
Yeah, it's great. You can even Chevy found this funny.
Chevy almost laughs during this bit.
And it's fun. I was waiting for them to do the coda at the end.
Right.
But obviously realizing at the time they didn't realize how funny it was. So, I'm sure the next time they come on, that's when they do it. But yeah, it was great to see. And it was really great to see Chevy like realize how funny it was and have to hold him and laugh.
I think that's the first time we see that on the show, right? Where someone almost breaks.
Probably, because this may have been the first funny thing we've seen.
In 3 episodes?
Live. I mean, in all seriousness, this is probably the funniest live bit we've seen. Is that line right there.
That leads into one of the most unique live bits we see in the show, which is Rob Reiner comes back to introduce a super rock star who needs no introduction. And it turns out to be Belushi singing as Joe Cocker, A Little Help from My Friends.
As much as I have ripped on this episode up to this point, I would watch all of it again and again to watch this sketch. This is brilliant. I have barely any notes because I sat here and I've seen this dozens of times.
Right.
This is amazing. I love it. This is something Belushi had done in Lemmings. He'd done the Joe Cocker, so he knew it. They do a great job. They put a great band together. He's got backing singers. Rob Reiner's like flustered, like, I don't know what's going on. Like, he just came in, here it is. But like, everything works. It's just amazing. And his impression is fucking phenomenal.
And his performance is just next level. It's so much fun to watch.
This still holds up as one of the all-time best musical performances by a cast member on this show. I would put this up against anything. I
can't argue with that.
Like, he's so good.
To your point, the band is great. Everything from beginning to end. And just the physicality that he displays in this and the commitment.
He falls off the fucking stage.
Yeah.
He rolls off the stage at one point at the end.
Yeah.
Like, this is how you know this is good. The audience applauds after his first line. The first line that he sings, the audience is like, oh my God.
What would you do if I sang had to? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ear and I'll sing you a song. I will try not to sing out a key.
And then they do it again at the end. You don't fully know the sketch is done. And you hear the audience clapping already. Like he's on the ground, but they start clapping before he starts like guzzling the beer.
Right.
Like it's amazing. This is like perfect. You can't knock this. This is A+ level stuff.
I don't disagree with any of it. I think it's awesome. Juxtaposed to the next bit, which is the Muppets. This is the same setup and characters as the last two shows, where we see Dregs and Vestiges is the name of the soap opera that they're putting on here. And it's another Muppet sketch.
It's interesting that this particular sketch comes after the Joe Cocker. The subject matter of this, after Joe Cocker. It's an interesting two-punch, it felt like. It's an interesting one, too. And I also felt this was the first time that the writers actually tried to be funny.
With the Muppets,
I'm not saying they were funny, but this felt like they were actually trying to like, let's do something. Let's try to make it work. Not saying they did.
Right. But the whole
smoking crater head, like they're it's obviously a drug reference bit,
right?
Again, which is why I say coming after the Joe Cocker bit is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And we get a new Muppet, which was cool. We get a new character.
Yeah. That was fun. And they make a reference to Blowing in the Wind as well.
Right.
Which I just thought was funny since Rob Reiner decided he had to sing it.
And I guess the Favat, that's going to be a thing.
That's
like,
how it ends.
I guess every week,
episode. Yeah.
Yes. I'm gathering now every week. There's something that happens and we go to Favat and it ends at Favat.
Yeah.
That and that every week, all momentum will grind to a halt when the Muppets come.
Well, yeah, but they're not the only thing that grinds it to a halt in this episode, but we'll get there. I don't think we need to dwell any longer on the Muppets.
No. I'm still jazzed about Belushi. Like I'm still excited about that Joe Cocker, which is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I purposely kind of moved us along because I know if I let you, we would talk about the Joe Cocker bit for an hour and a half.
I'd do an entire episode on that impression.
Well, all right. Maybe some week if I'm out sick, you can dedicate an entire.
It's going to be on our Patreon when we have that set up. So don't worry, everyone get ready for your cash. Have it ready because that's what you're going to dial in for.
Following the Muppets is the Droolers Anti-Defamation League message. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
You sound so confused by this.
I following the Muppets.
No, stick with it. You were fine.
Really?
I'm just saying. You just sound. Because
as I was saying it, I was like, "Is that right? Is it the Anti-Defamation League?" Because I only had half of it written down in my notes. So
it's Chevy, right? That's Chevy that's in the sketch.
Chevy who?
You should go back and listen to episode 1.
I think it's too long. The bit is Chevy did some public service announcement to camera. I'm assuming this was a pre-tape, but I don't know.
No, I think this is live.
This is live
because you can hear the audience. You can hear him.
Oh, that's right.
You can hear the audience and he reacts against it, which is why this works so much better than say Jerry Rubin last week because he can play off the audience's reactions.
Right. And he breaks here too because of the audience.
I think he's great in this. This is so silly and fun. Again, it's short. It's one person, but it works. It's really funny.
Do you know if Chevy wrote this? Or
I don't know. I didn't find who wrote this.
I thought he was great.
He's really good.
Yeah.
And they make another Don Pardo reference, which is hilarious.
I did write that down too.
But what did you think about the next sketch? Because this is interesting to me.
The next sketch was the square dance sketch where basically Dan Aykroyd is I don't know what you call the person who announces square dancing. Tells the dancers what to do.
He has a title. I know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but yes.
But he's kind of a masochist. He's like having the square dancers hit one another, kick one another.
It's so bizarre. You know who this has to be a Michael O'Donoghue piece. I didn't find it and confirm it, but this has to be Michael O'Donoghue.
He's in it. And he actually looks like he's enjoying the square dancing. It's
kind of the only funny thing I thought of this sketch was actually seeing him in the sketch in the blue shirt with the frills doing the dance. This is just bizarre to me. Like, I don't know why. Like, I did not like this. Like, is this just a whole bit on domestic violence kind of thing? Up until the point of them ripping the woman's dress? Like,
right. And then they all shoot one another.
That wasn't even the hardest part for me to watch.
No, yes, I agree with you 100%. It was a very hard sketch to watch. I didn't think it was funny, but I did note that Penny Marshall was in it to kind of even out the numbers.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite part of this sketch, though, the fiddler. That guy could play the fiddle.
That's Neil Levy.
Really?
Friend of the pod. Neil Levy's back. It's him and Schiller.
Friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod. Neil Levy is back. Him and Tom Schiller. They play the instruments in the We'll See Them Again.
Yes. We will see them again. I didn't realize it was him. Oh, I thought that was great. That was my favorite part.
I think this is the first example, maybe, and we're going to say this a lot, I'm sure, throughout the 5 seasons, and especially this season, of just something that does not play today. Like, this sketch does not play well today. I didn't like it. I don't know. I just was uncomfortable watching it. I was like, I didn't think it was funny, and I'm just like, this is something that would not fly.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Well, we go from that awkward sketch back to Rob pulling hosting duties. And he introduces Mark Hampton and Denny Dillon.
This is this just doesn't fit. I don't get it.
I don't get it. So Denny Dillon, Mark Hampton were in an off-Broadway play at the time. Some of the writers had seen the show that they were in because Meatloaf was part of the show. And they convinced Lorne to let these two audition this bit where they play nuns, and that's the Pope setup. You tried your best. Good work.
I mean, this is bizarre because I think Denny Dillon's funny, and it's interesting to compare this almost to like Valerie Brumfield, which is another special guest we've had so far on the show this season that didn't work. But as we talked about, I would credit her not working to the show, dictating her, like cutting her act and all this. This is their act. Like, this just wasn't funny. And she is a funny person. Like, she has the distinction. She is the first person to be a special guest on the show and then become a cast member. She's a cast member down the road in season 6. And she is a very funny person, but like, this bit is just not good. And I mean, the audience doesn't really laugh that much. It's like no one thinks it's working.
No, because it doesn't work. One of the things that I thought actually was maybe this is more of an audience bit that they just couldn't do on TV where they interact with the audience. I don't know. I'm trying to give them credit for being funny at some point. This was not it. This was not very amusing, in my opinion. It went on very long for me. And yeah.
I mean, if we're trying to find something good to say about this, I would say the fact that it was so long makes the next bit being short work.
Maybe, I guess. Were you into the next bit? Do you like the next bit?
I did, but this is why. I mean, if you want to talk about all.
Yeah. So the next bit, Rob again, fulfilling his duties as host, introduces a new feature, What Gilda Ate. And it's just Gilda to camera, rattling off everything she ate that day, which turns out to be a lot.
And I'll tell you why I like this. And this is one of the reasons why I would argue that this is one of the most important episodes in the history of the show. We are getting to see the cast in this episode.
Yep.
We see Belushi do the Joe Cocker impression. We get to see Gilda playing Gilda. which will become a staple of this show and one of the key reasons of its popularity. We saw Jane Curtin do another talk show host bit. We saw Garrett Morris. It was small, but Weekend Update with his Hard of Hearing.
Right.
We're seeing the cast that's not Chevy Chase all get a chance to sign. Lorraine Newman does an impression. Like, we get to see everybody. And that's why I actually really like this bit, is we get to see Gilda being Gilda. And it's another example of showcasing the cast. And that is what I think is the biggest thing from this episode, is it all works. Like, there's not an instance you showcase a cast member. The only person you really don't see is Dan, like in a showcase situation. Everybody else you see.
In this episode. Yeah.
In this episode. And they all work. And if nothing else, this gives everybody, writers, cast, Lorne, the confidence of like, we can let the cast shine. To your point at the start of this episode, when you were like, if Rob Reiner walked away,
right,
the cast could do it. You say that now knowing who everybody is, but do you think 3 weeks in, if Rob Reiner walked off, they'd be like, sure, throw the cast up, we'll be fine?
Well, Lorne would just call Paul Simon.
I would say at 11:30 at night, no.
Right.
I would say at 1 o'clock in the morning after this show, they'd be like, fuck them. We can do it.
Right.
And we'll get to that mentality later on as well. But it's been building all episode. The Lorraine Jane sketch, Garrett on Weekend Update, the stellar Joe Cocker, and now Gilda playing Gilda. You're getting the cast showcased. And that's what this show will eventually be all about. And this is really where you start to see it, is this episode. So as much as I've been complaining about how bad so many of these sketches and bits are, for this particular bit, like it balances out.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I get that. I think it really works because it's Gilda and the way that she delivers her lines, even when she's kind of getting to the part where she's talking about everything she ate. And she's like, and then on my way back from the elevator, I found a milk dud covered in tobacco in my pocketbook. And I ate that. It's just like, in her Gilda way, totally, that's what makes it work.
Yeah. Even in the end, when Rob kicks her off, he's like, I'm going to go have a snack.
But on the way back to the office, I had a Fig Newton and an Almond Joy candy bar. And then when I got back to the office, I told everyone I was going to the bathroom. But I really went to a coffee shop and had apple pie a la mode, and I ate the whole thing. And on the way back up in the elevator, I found a milk dud covered with tobacco in the bottom of my purse. And I ate it. And then
Rob kicks Gilda off, and then he introduces what he calls my favorite part of the show.
This is a goddamn travesty.
Because it's a film written, directed, and starring my best friend, Albert Brooks. Go on. I don't disagree with you that it's a travesty.
Listen, I've complained about Albert Brooks for 2 weeks. I'm going to do it again. But for this one, just the balls to make a 13-minute film. I mean, know your audience, know where you're playing this. Is anyone surprised that Lorne Michaels didn't want to show this and was like, they had to originally, when this aired, put a commercial in the middle of it. Like, you couldn't even air the thing straight through.
Yeah, it's long and not very funny.
I mean, there are jokes. It's funny. Once they get to the operation, it is actually funny. But what is that, like 6 minutes in?
Yes.
So like they get in and he's in there and he's like, why is he awake? Like, that's funny. It's a funny bit. Why? It's like, how long did it take to get there?
But that old man being like, I hope it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. There's definitely some funny lines. The operation itself is funny. Like when he argues with the doctor from Sweden, it's funny. Like there's definitely funny bits. I love he lets the wife come in and she's still wearing her sunglasses. And then she's like, what's that over there? That's his lung. What's that? That's the other lung. Oh, where would that be on me? I think it's in the same place. So like, there's definitely funny bits, but then again, it's like my next note is like, this is still fucking going.
Right. No, it could have been a really nice, tight 5-minute film, but it's not.
Yeah, it just doesn't work in this. It's just, and it's not to say, again, he's not funny and there's no humor in it. It's just like a 13-minute film is not what you need on any show. Yeah.
No, I think, knowing where you're going to play your film is key to how you cut your film. And if you have a 13-minute film for a 90-minute show, really a little over an hour. How does that work?
Yeah. This is just really like the heart of the matter of like why I don't like Albert Brooks. Like, he is funny. I'm not going to say he's not, but he's so pretentious that he thinks he can make a 13-minute film and it needs to be on Saturday Night Live. Like, make a 5-6 minute film, make a 4-minute film. Anyway, enough. Hashtag. I don't know. We need a good Albert Brooks hashtag. That
I'm sure at top of his list is, I wonder what people think of the 6 films I made for Saturday Night Live in 1975.
It's Albert Brooks. You don't think he isn't? I guarantee you he is. Anyway,
there's only one way to find out.
There is.
We should
Friend of the pod, Neil Levy. Can you
ask Albert Brooks?
I'm going to ask Alan Zweibel when he gets back to me.
So there's one sketch left in the night. It is with Rob and his wife Penny playing a couple who are having an affair on their partners, and they're seated in a restaurant. Yeah,
I missed that part.
Well,
I wasn't paying attention.
That's okay.
I was too confused as to why they were on home base and not like on a restaurant set.
They're at home base with a few tables with some tablecloths, and the band. There's a violin and guitarist playing, and there are other people being seated in the quote unquote restaurant.
Sorry to go back. My one note about Rob Reiner in this sketch is that this is his only good part in the whole episode. And I didn't realize that they were having an affair. And I'm like, wow, Rob Reiner's really good in this sketch.
And you weren't even paying attention?
No, but I thought he was actually really good. And I had no idea he was having an affair with Penny Marshall.
He was. I mean, I think they were both playing it really well, and they're playing it straight. And everyone around them and behind them, they're in bee costumes.
Not originally. There's a couple behind them, and they leave.
Is there? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
And then the bees come down the stairs, and they don't see him at first, and the bees slowly infiltrate.
There's a man behind them, and Chevy's playing the waiter.
Again, Chevy not playing a bee.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that.
Week 2 in a row, he's not doing the bee.
Interesting. So yeah, Rob and Penny playing this part, and it's kind of an overly dramatic thing, and there's just really quick one-liners in there that are kind of funny, but not great. And
which isn't the point, because the point of the sketch is, go ahead.
No, and then everyone that turns up is in a bee costume,
and then Rob Reiner like has a hissy fit, and it's complaining. I didn't want to do this. I said no bees. I'm not, just complaining about it and going on and on, which I think is funny because, again, knowing the backstory, it feels like it's very indicative of like how Rob Reiner was apparently that whole week about the show. And, I thought him and Penny were great, both sitting at the table. And also even like once he starts freaking out, like Penny's reactions to him and her performance is really great in the sketch.
Yeah. I think Penny was great in everything she was in this episode.
And then this culminates with Belushi basically going on a rant against Rob Reiner that you think we like this, you think we want to do this, you know.
We didn't ask to be bees. You see, you've got Norman Lear and a first-rate writing staff. But this is all they came up with for us.
And I would argue that this moment here with Belushi basically breaking the fourth wall, if that's the right term to use, but like exposing the backstage life of the show is what really sets the show apart and sets it off on the next level. That they can embrace who they are, what they're doing, what the show is. This will be a staple for the next 5 years. All the scenes of like cold opens in the locker room behind the show, Lorne Michaels with the Beatle offer, Lorne Michaels in general just being on the show. The fact that they pull the curtain back and show you what's going on behind the scenes, I think is creatively the best decision they make and is such a pivotal moment for this show. And as much as I dislike this episode, for that And as I said earlier, the whole cast being showcased, and I think everybody realizing that this cast is something special makes this episode, on one hand, amazing and great when you don't just compare like the box score of the actual performances.
I think that's a very interesting point, and I didn't think of it as being the moment where they expose all of this for the first time and kind of open it up.
Because they'll do it again and again and again. Like Lorne Michael with the Beatles offer, George Harrison then coming on the show and giving Lorne Michael shit for not giving enough money, Paul Simon walking off stage in the turkey costume down the road. Like I said, all those cold opens when they're like backstage in the locker room and people not wanting to go on the air. Like they set this here and it really defines the show for these first 5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Belushi's definitely the mouthpiece of the group for this bit.
Yeah, because he's the one who hated the bees the most out of the cast. And just, he can play that anger so well. He's just so good. Like his just utter contempt for being in that out. And he's yelling at him and the antennas are like wiggling and waggling. Like it's just, it's funny. It's sincere. It's really good.
And that's it.
Literally, that's it.
There's
no good night. There's no credits. It was this show when it aired ran long. So the last sketch ended and that was it. And so the credits we see now when we watch it was put together, for the DVD release and such. But yeah, when it ended, it was just, that's it.
Which to our discussion before about what is the show and how is you coming into the cold opens and everything, to end it this way with that argument between John and Rob, not really an argument, but the discussion around the bees and everything, and then to just end and it's done. There's no resolution around that, really. Like Rob gives a little...
He kind of apologizes and then... Yeah. And then they go on hiatus.
For what, 2 weeks?
I think they just have 1 week. But that's what's interesting about watching this show. Like, so now we've seen the first 3-week block. And it's really interesting to like watch those first 3 episodes and how it grows and what it becomes. And now okay, there's going to be an off week and they come back for episode 4 and like see what that's going to be. Because you can see the steps as they grow. Like it's really cool to watch.
There's definitely a progression of how they lay out the show, how they work with the cast and the musical guests, and they start laying foundation pieces of the show. It's an interesting process.
Yeah, like each episode they're getting more. And after seeing these 3 episodes, like it's not surprising that everybody says episode 4 is really the first episode that takes the shape of what people think of Saturday Night Live. Because they had 3 episodes under their belts to try things out and an extra week to put it together. So it makes sense that it would, everything's leading up towards that. But for this particular episode, overall, not very good.
Overall, I think you said it earlier. It's hit or miss. Some things I think definitely hit, like Belushi's Joe Cocker. I guess the lockers isn't really a hit on the show, but it definitely was something that worked. And even those small pieces like the Dangerous but Inept talk show, right? Like that's working out something and getting like honing that talk show bit.
Yeah. I mean, on paper, it's not good. It's more misses than hits. There's a few excellent things, but they're offset by some really bad things like the Muppets and a 13-minute Albert Brooks and square dancing and the cold open that doesn't really work and fashion don'ts. So on paper, it's a bad episode. But if you take a step back and look at it in the context of the show as a whole and what this show means to the growth of the show and the foundation of the show, you have to put it up there. Like there's so much in this show that's going to make the show what it is that I didn't think about it when I went in to view it. And after viewing it, I was like, okay, like it's an important show.
It's an important episode. And there's a lot there, good and bad. How do you think the show would be different if Albert Brooks's film was not 13 minutes and was closer to, say, 5 or 6? So you have an extra 8 minutes to play with. Would it be more bad sketches that you're not happy about?
I think it would be more sketches. I can't tell if they're good or bad. Like you never know what's good or bad. And to their credit, you don't know when you put it up what's going to work or what doesn't work. But they probably had a handful of things in their back pocket they would have done. Maybe there's an All in the Family spoof. Oh, maybe they didn't do that yet. But I'm sure they had more sketches they could do. And would I have rather seen a bad 4 to 5 minute sketch or 2 bad 4 to 5 minute sketches as opposed to as opposed to 8 minutes of the Albert Brooks film? Like, yes, I would much rather have a short Albert Brooks film and roll the dice and watch 2 live sketches with this cast. Any day of the week, I would take that.
They weren't doing 4-minute sketches at this point. Nothing is 4 minutes long except for the Muppets and Albert Brooks.
Home Securities.
Was it that long?
It was long-ish.
Yeah. All right.
They also need the time. I mean, they need the opportunity to do that too. Like, that's what I'm saying. I would rather them cut Albert Brooks and had 2 meaty sketches that they try. They'll get there. They will get there eventually. I think they get there in week 4. So we'll see.
I think that about does it, Brad. So what's Brad's best bit?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what my must-see is on this one.
I know, but you still have to say it. It's a podcast. People can't see your expression.
Oh, right. I mean, it's Joe Cocker, hands down. Joe Cocker every day. And then I would also do the bees. I think you need to see that bee sketch is great. I think it's funny on its own, but also in the history of the show. Joe Cocker and the bees are the 2 I say.
Yeah, it's really hard to argue with you on that. I think Joe Cocker definitely, and I think for the uniqueness of it, I'm going to say the lockers because I thought they were amazing, and you don't see anything like that with any regularity anyway.
True.
All right, that's it for this episode. Next week, we're going to watch episode 4 of season 1 with host Candace Bergen and musical guest Esther Phillips. So until then, good night.
Good night.
Have a pleasant
and
tomorrow.
Have a pleasant tomorrow.